What will stacking gold and silver be like in a world controlled by CBDC?
Essential. Absolutely, positively essential, because it's the only way that you can maintain your freedom.
What will a CBDC do to the price of physical gold and silver? Hey everyone, thanks for watching Yankee Stacking. Today I have the privilege of having Lynette Zang back. This is a must-watch video, people, and I really believe it will earn your YouTube like down below.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. I had so much fun the last time. I was really looking forward to this.
Well, just for people that might not know who you are an economist, a chief market analyst, a hardcore stacker and prepper, and someone I absolutely love to watch anytime you're on YouTube.
Thank you. That happens a lot.
It does, I know. The last time we spoke, we talked about CBDC, central bank digital currencies. And that video got a lot of attention, 630,000 views and growing. Clearly, CBDCs are on everyone's mind. And after that video, Lynette, I got a lot of questions from our stacking community concerning how a central bank digital currency would affect gold and silver. Like, how gold and silver would be priced. How might it affect the stacker's ability to buy or sell precious metals, and a whole bunch of other things. So I think we need to dive a little deeper, Lynette. What will stacking gold and silver be like in a world controlled by CBDC?
Essential. Absolutely, positively essential, because it's the only way that you can maintain your freedom.
The FedNow program. It's like the monetary plumbing through which an everyday retail central bank digital currency will flow, right?
Well, yes, that's it. But also, they need to get us used to it. So it's a 24/7 instant payment tool. Now, that sounds really good on the surface, but it can certainly exacerbate that 24/7 what we saw in March and in April with the regional banks.
Right.
Because just like it's an instant payment system, they can instantly remove their money from the bank and create more runs and more systemic problems in the banking system.
But this rollout really is sort of like the wholesale CBDC, the back end, the infrastructure, if you will. It's not necessarily the thing that we're going to have on our phones quite yet, but it's a necessary first step, right?
Exactly. It is a necessary first step. And when they were, if you go back a few years when we were going through the pandemic and all of the stimulus, they were saying how great it would be if everybody had that account. They already had the FedNow account in place, right? It's just going live, but it's actually been in place for quite some time. And they said, look at how much easier it would be if everybody had this account. We could just push a button and there'd be a whole bunch of money in all of those accounts for people to go and spend and keep this economy moving, because it's a consumer-based economy. So, and their hope is that once you start using it, that's where your deposits will go, that you will choose to use it, expand its use, etc. And then they have you by the cojones.
It's going to be really hard for us to avoid it. Correct?
Well, unless you have gold and silver.
All right. So thank you for bringing it back to gold and silver. Yep.
Well, because if everything you have is fiat, you cannot avoid it.
Okay, so let me ask you some of these questions that I've been getting since our last video. Let's get to this. First question. What will a CBDC do to the price of physical gold and silver?
Well, I think it depends on when it comes in, because without a doubt, we have to go through a hyperinflationary reset if the CBDC is indeed going to be the new currency, because we have to get rid of all of that debt. Now, I have looked and looked to see how they would justify bringing it out. In the current system, they create debt, and then that creates the money. So I have read where they're still going to do it debt-based, and if they do, they have to get rid of all of the debt that's out there. So we have to have either a hyperinflationary, right, or hyper-deflationary, because they're going to sell it, according to them, they're going to sell it like, if you let us have these CBDCs and control it, there will not be any inflation. No, there'll be deflation. Right? Which is the same thing. It's just the flip side of the coin. It's really going to depend on the level of confidence that people have in the central banks, in the currency, in the CBDCs, right? If they don't have that confidence in them, well, then you're going to see gold go up dramatically. If they can say this is going to fix it, you're not going to likely see that, because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. And so physical metals is where you would see it for the physical only market, which is where we're seeing it now.
Okay. So a reset, maybe hyperinflation or deflation, revaluing the price of gold and silver, likely to go up, at least measured in dollars.
Or any other currency.
Yeah, that leads me to the second question. Will gold and silver eventually be priced in a CBDC denomination?
100%. 100%. Well, you'll probably see it priced in terms of dollars and priced in terms of CBDCs, because the dollar is also going to have to be priced in terms of CBDCs. So the most likely way that it's going to come out is at a 1-for-1 ratio and basis. So if you think back to when they went to the euro from the individual currencies, right? What they did was they devalued the currency at a certain level first, about 17%, telling the public, we have to do this so that everybody is equal, and then we can go and make this transition. And then when they made that transition, totally. This is the same playbook they use over and over again. And then let's say it was €2 to buy a loaf of bread, and it was 2 lira to buy a loaf of bread. So it looks like it's the same because 2 for 2, but it took 4 lira to buy the €2. So then you had a further 50% devaluation. And it was interesting because I was recently in Italy, and I have a guide friend. I've known him since 2009. That was the last time that I was there, and we had a conversation. And we were talking about that transition. And he said, everything got twice as expensive. He said, but I couldn't charge more. And I said, why couldn't you charge more? Everything went up. And he goes, because people just wouldn't pay it.
Wow.
So his income went down, and I'm sure a lot of people had that experience. So I think it will look very similar to that, where if they need to make some adjustments, but they're going to probably try not to, because the key is to have you think that nothing has changed. And
nothing to see here, move along, everything's fine, right?
Exactly. And they've talked about this at the IMF, and using the example, well, if you go to the grocery store and you're going to use the CBDC, you won't notice that anything has changed. Well, yeah, they don't want you to know that. I was there in 71 when we shifted from at least a quasi-gold-backed currency to a new currency. And I remember President Nixon saying, hey, if you buy goods that are made in the US, you're not going to notice anything. So just buy US goods. Nothing is changing. Well, here we are. We've lost over 97% of the purchasing power value, and we've got debt, unpayable debt. Again, a rise in gold price is an indication of a failing currency, unless it's loss of confidence. And we're witnessing this. I'm paying really close attention to what is happening in Zimbabwe right now, because they are in process of issuing a gold-backed CBDC that they want people to transact with. Because last year they came out with a 1 ounce coin. Well, the wealthy could afford a 1 ounce coin, but the public couldn't.
There was a lot of talk too, rumor in Twitter and so forth, that the BRICS nations were also looking at gold as a potential backing of the new BRICS level CBDC, maybe part of a basket of currencies.
Here's the thing, I did research on that. The only discussion has been to enable BRICS nations to use their own currency to buy from another country. There is no talk of gold yet because they can't do it until the debt gets burned off. I don't care what country you are, as long as you have unpayable debt, how can you go into something new? And this is the people that it's hard for them to understand that you've got to stack now, and you've also got to put in place your food, water, energy, security, as well as your barter ability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And the time to get it done is now, not when the crisis is unfolding, because then it's too late for you to do anything. I'll tell you a new trend that I just found when I read a current report from Invesco. Now, Invesco is not about gold and silver. Invesco is about fiat money, mutual funds, and ETFs, and all that garbage, and bonds and stocks. But they did this whole report, and I hadn't seen this from anywhere else yet. And what they discovered, or what they reported on, is that more and more and more central banks are repatriating their gold.
Yes.
That means they're bringing it home. They're not holding at the Bank of England and using it as collateral for trading, which they've been doing for a long time, easy to manipulate. They are bringing it home. What is that really telling us? That's telling us how close we are to collapse. Because if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And they know that. And everybody that's listening should know that too. Do you remember when Venezuela asked the Bank of England for its gold back? And what did they say? No. I mean, it took a long time to get it back. Ultimately, they did.
Right.
But because if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And it really doesn't matter what your perception is.
Will the purchase of gold and silver be outlawed, or at the very least restricted?
Likely. Because what do they know? They know that physical gold held at home runs no geopolitical risk, will protect you from inflation, will protect you from any level of crisis. So, yeah.
That is scary. How will people be able to sell their precious metals? I mean, will they, if they went to a local coin shop, right, and they've got this gold and they want to transact, are they going to get it back in CBDCs?
Yes. Yes. Whatever the local currency, whatever that currency is, when you liquidate something, they're going to give you that currency, which if that is the currency that we use to transact, then you have your stacks over here and you liquidate it as you need it. And that's how you protect your freedom and your choices. So, yeah, they are going to do it into whatever the tool of barter is, whether it's CBDCs, dollars, or hoochie cooch.
And if you want to avoid that new digital currency, you're going to have to barter directly. You're going to have barter in a black or gray market for goods and services, no?
Yes, absolutely. And there will be a black market. There's always a black market. They call it the parallel market because they don't want to say black market. But that's also where you're going to find more truth in valuations, right? And we've seen that over and over and over again, where governments suppress the price of gold, but in the black market, it's substantially higher in terms of that currency, but not as high as its fundamental value because they're taking risk. The black market is taking a risk of buying it and using it. So yes, I do think that we're going to see a lot of direct barter with the gold and the silver.
One last question for you, Lynette, and you did touch on this at the very beginning. What are the actual indicators, the things we should be watching for that indicates a retail CBDC is about to hit?
They've got to have enough adoption. The last time I checked, and I mean, that's what a lot of these cryptocurrencies were about, was getting people comfortable and getting adoption. And the last time I checked, they had about 16% of the American population that on some level had done something with cryptocurrencies. But I think that what you have to look for is a big crisis that will force people, because you can't separate the CBDCs from the FedNow. But all of a sudden, people are scared. They're losing their jobs. There's inflation like crazy. Whatever it is, huge crisis. Banks are imploding because that ain't over yet, right? All the issues that made the ones that we saw implode, that's an issue for all of the banks. And
but like a pandemic, war, natural disaster, civil unrest, any of these things could trigger. You're thinking about a crisis. Right.
I'm thinking about a crisis. And that's when it hits, because then people are desperate and they're scared. And then they'll go, well, look at how great we are. Here's a whole bunch of money in these FedNow accounts. Go shopping.
Here's your stimulus. Wow.
So that's when it's going to happen, because they know that they can't just there's a lot of pushback for it. Even in those countries that they've tested, the population has not really adopted it that easily, except maybe China, because they control their population.
I thought of one more. I'm sorry, Lynette. One more question. I was just thinking about another question I get is, well, Yankee, my state is enacting laws that are going to restrict or ban CBDCs. And I think that's great. But is that really going to hold up nationally on a federal level?
That's a very good question. I like those states that have made gold and silver legal money. It's ridiculous that it is money. I mean, you look at all of their documentation.
Just acknowledging it, right?
But they're acknowledging it. Yeah. But can the states overrule the federal government?
That could be a very interesting battle in the Supreme Court, or could it even affect the unity of the nation?
I think it's highly probable that we will see a revolution.
Wow.
Well, it's just because that's like such a huge statement.
That is huge.
But we are definitely seeing a rise, where we had a rise of protesting, a rise of rioting on a global basis before 2020. And then 2020 was conveniently used to quash all of that, but it's rising up again. And we need a revolution, to be honest with you. There are more of us than there are of them. Why are we allowing them to abuse us? And more people are recognizing this. So, yeah.
Lynette Zang, people. Wow. Thank you so much for your amazing insights. I hope we talk again real soon.
I look forward to it. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.